Howdy once again, it's Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher, and this is part one of a two-part video on restoring this Beverly B2 throatless shear. Now, in a recent video you may have watched where I visited the defunct Beverly plant up in Chicago. That's a two-part video, and I'll show you the title for that in just a second. Also, in a recent video I showed unpacking this as I received this in the mail from Mike Reisner up in Michigan. So thanks to him for this donation so I can do this video on the Beverly shear. There was one of these in every school shop years ago and every sheet metal shop. So let's take a look at what a Beverly shear is. You may wish to watch this video. It was a two-part video. I'll put the link in the description. And if you have not seen it yet, you may wish to watch tips number 740, where I received the Beverly shear in the mail. This shear has been in storage for some time. It's a bit rusty. As you can see here, someone welded the shear to a table and then at some other time cut the table off. I guess that's why there's a plate of metal welded to it. That will come off first thing, but let's see if this thing will cut. The blades are not chipped, but they do feel rather dull. Well, this is soft aluminum. Let's see if it will cut that smoothly. I'll just trim a little piece off of it here and see what happens. Oh, that worked pretty nice. But again, this is very soft. It left a little bit of a burr. Let's try it on some 28 gauge galvanized. Not bad. Maybe this will not need new blades, although it's very ragged right here. It would need deburring. Maybe the blades just need adjustment. There will be derusting in this video, obviously, but let me take the blade out first. And the blade, at least the lower blade, is held in by this clamp. And I have had this loosened up before, so I'm not struggling with it, I'll have to admit. And the lower blade pulls right out. There are two set screws here, and I did remove and replace those and retap those holes. I spent over an hour getting those out, trying not to break anything off. I did succeed, and I made a new pin right here, which I will show you later. So these will come out now very easily. And those are meant to adjust the blade in this direction in alignment with the top blade. The handle is held in by one bolt, and then we'll pull right out. The handle is bent. I don't know if you can see that it's bent, so I will be making a new one. This is 1-inch pipe. For variety, I intend to remove the rust on the main piece here with the electrolysis, and then on the smaller pieces I'm going to use Evapo-rust. Everything needs to be degreased in order to do these processes. But the very first thing I'm going to do is go out into the yard, and with this DeWalt grinder I'm going to grind these horrible looking wells off the best I can to get this plate off of here, and then I will degrease it and put it in the tank. What do you think? I believe this is cast steel, like a malleable steel, rather than cast iron. Well, that wasn't so bad. I'm glad to get that off. And now, using the other grinder, I'm going to go back outside and dress up all four sides where they pretended to be welding here. Alrighty, the main casting is degreased and ready to derust. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the electrolysis process because I've done so many videos on that, but I'm going to refer you to the playlist for my many, that is 14 different videos that I have on different ways of derusting. So if you want more information on how electrolysis works, go back into that archive. Now here is the playlist. And I will put the link for this in the description. Here's a 5-gallon bucket with H2O, and I'm going to put some of the Arm & Hammer sodium carbonate, that's called super washing soda. And I may have to add more water, I'm sure I will. How much of that baking product there? Not baking, washing soda. 1/2 of a senior cup of McDonald's coffee. And then mix it up nicely. Oh, I need more than that. I like to use the fair amount method. And now the casting itself will be baptized. As you can see, that's enough water. No problemo. Okay, here are the two anodes, just some pieces of steel with a fair amount of surface area. I've got them wired together with copper wire and then a bare spot here to clip the positive lead onto from the battery charger, which is a 12 volter that I paid $5 for. Now I don't want this to touch the casting. And same with this one. Okay, positive to the anode, and of course the work is the cathode. And you should see it start to work almost immediately. This is like having a hired hand you do not have to pay. Now this takes time, so I'll be back in a day or two. Maybe we'll look at it in one day. Today is Monday. But I probably will leave it in for 2 days, and in the meantime I will degrease the other parts that are still on the table. But I'm going to use Evapo-rust on that. It's only 20 minutes later, and that's what it looks like. It is Tuesday, 24 hours later, and this is what it looks like. It's still cooking, and I'm going to leave it on there for another day, but now I'm going to turn my attention to the other parts. Okay, let me get started on these other parts now. Now you've seen me use Evapo-rust. How do you pronounce it anyway? But anyway, I bought this for $15 about 3 years ago. Now it's $29, so I was too cheap to buy any more. But let's pour some of that in here. I borrowed this out of the cupboard. That's Rubbermaid's. Just the right size for that, isn't it? All of these parts have been degreased. Now this is used before, that's why you see a little discoloration in it. Just the right amount to cover, and maybe this will fit in there too. And we'll see what that looks like tomorrow. Good morning. Well, it's been 2 days. This is Wednesday morning, so it's been about 48 hours of perking and working, and there isn't as much sludge on there as I thought. You know, there wasn't really a massive amount of rust on that, so I hope I got it all off. So I unplugged the battery charger, and I'll disconnect these leads. And let's see what we've got here on the anodes. Well, there's a fair amount of rust. Looks like red barnacles, doesn't it? So that's one of them. Let me pull out the other one, see what it looks like. And there's the other one. All right, let's see what this beauty looks like. Whoops. Well, I assure you it doesn't look great. I'm going to take it out and rinse it off with a garden hose. Be right back. Okay, I'm back down in the basement where I think the lighting might be a little bit better. I spent 10 minutes scrubbing this under the garden hose with a wire brush, and it doesn't look great, and it is a very, very crude casting. I did find right here, you won't be able to read it, a serial number. Was hidden by corrosion. That is the serial number. I do not know what that means or when it was made, but that's just for your information. This must have been painted gray or some other color from the factory, but there really was no trace of paint on it anywhere. Now the top part right here, you remember I had sticking out of the water in the electrolysis bath. So that has not been done, but there just isn't a whole lot of difference between the two. However, with a little bit more cleanup and some minor grinding, this is going to be ready to mask and paint. But let's move in on this. There was no machining done whatsoever on the bottom. Perhaps just a little bit of grinding right there and there, but it is just a very crude casting. A lot of little defects that do not affect anything at all, but there's quite a large pit, probably where some sand fell in. That looks pretty good, and there's some nice fillets. Remember, if you watch that other video of mine, you will have seen some of the original patterns for this, foundry patterns. That's where the number is. I'm not sure if this is a casting defect or why there appears to be a big blob of weld on there. Quite a large imperfection right there also. So they weren't nice clean castings by any means. There's quite a bit of galling right here. Now there's nothing I can do about that other than to dress it just a little bit with a file, and that will all be greased when I put it back together. There is quite a bit of wear on some of these gear teeth. When I was in the factory, the Beverly factory, I showed you some shapers that were capable of cutting a curve. So this surface right here, you can see is curved, and if you examine it closely, you'll see that there are shaper tooling marks. And also, there is an undercut right here, and the purpose of that was cast in, of course, was so that when the shaper tool came up to this end here, it could terminate the cut in this void without a need to machine up against this shoulder. A lot of the work on these Beverleys was done on shapers. And of course Bubba had his way with this machine, because you can see here he used it for a welding table, so there is spatter all over here. Now I will remove that simply because it's unsightly. Also Bubba used it as an anvil, and there are chisel marks here where he just hammered away. I will run a tap through these several holes here just to clean them up. And I'm not going to show any of that sanding or prep here because that would just be boring, but I'm going to spend about an hour with a very fine grit on my side grinder just dressing this up a little bit and getting it ready for painting. So in the following video you will see me mask this and prime it and then paint it gray. But let's turn our attention right now to the other parts. These other parts have been in the Evapo-rust bath for 24 hours or more. You know, I never liked that black finish that you get from this product. But of course this will be painted mainly. I had some bolts in there. Remember, I degreased everything. This will not work if you have paint or grease on the parts. And I suppose I need to throw that away. It was used before. Now it's just as black as the ace of spades. Now I will take these out and rinse them off real quick with clear water. I think they will flash rust, but that is so superficial I am not worried about it right now. Okay, they're all cleaned up as best I can do. You can see the flash rust starting already, and I cannot understand why there is no paint on anything. I wonder if this went through a fire, not a major fire, but a fire. This is the only trace of Beverly gray that I could find on the bottom of that clamp. But this welding spatter is everywhere, even on the end of a bolt, so I still don't get that. These were very poor castings. I'm wondering if this was made during the war and they said, that's good enough, we're not doing it over. Or they had to send this to a foundry that was not that good of a foundry. But there's just a lot of defects in the castings. Notice where a riser or a sprue went in right here. And there's another one of those surfaces that had been machined by a shaper that can shape curves. I hope you look at that other video. And this is just terrible. But apparently it did not weaken it. And look at the galling here as well, which means that chips or debris was in there. I don't know how it got in there because that's a pretty tight surface. And as far as this piece is concerned, a lot of wear again to the teeth. I don't think it'll function. There's nothing I can do about that. And the galling continues. This piece has a lot of gall. And I suspect these were parts numbers, not pattern numbers. So maybe B1 or 2B1 was the main piece. I'll have to go back and look and see if there was a number on there. So that's size 2B, 2 Beverly, and part number 2, part 3, and finally part 4. That would be so they could identify them probably at the foundry and when they're sorting them out in the factory. And here are the blades directly out of the chemical. Now what I did as an experiment here is I dipped them just up to that level and let them sit overnight, but you can see that the black ugly part is what was in the chemical. So I don't think that did much to these, and since this is tool steel, it seems to leave it a funny color, so I will clean these up on the wire brush, staying away from the cutting edge. And well, let's see what this does, if anything. Well, that works a lot better than the Evapo-rust. Anyway, what I'm going to do with these, I'd like to have a new set or send these in, but that's so terribly expensive that I think I'm going to try to dress them just a little bit. I've got nothing to lose, with a diamond hone. I won't show any of that. I'm just about at the end of part 1. In part 2, I'm going to have all of this masked off. This masked off, the machine surfaces. I'll dress it a little bit, like I said, with file. And then I'm going to prime it, and I'm going to paint it, and then reassembly, and then demonstration of it cutting, and that will all be done in part 2. So join me then and there, and there are just a ton of still pictures at the end of this video, so watch those if you're in the mood. And one more thing I want to show you, and then I'm signing out, and I'll see you in part 2. This is tubalcain, Mr. Pete. So long for now. Okay, these are the anodes. I want to scrape off just to show you how much rust came off. Now, there was also a lot in that 5-gallon bucket, but it was so fine I was not able to collect it. It ended up in the yard, to be honest with you. I love this brass hide scraper. I think I didn't have a good flow of the material. This was up against the wall. That's why there are bare spots. Quite a bit more on this side. These would be reusable, but I'm going to dispose of them in an environmentally correct manner. You know me. So that's a pretty sizable pile. Let's see what we got on the other one here. A lot on that one, isn't there? And this one is badly pitted. So this one was doing the lion's share of the work. I don't know if the connections were better or it was closer to the power source. And in fact, I don't really care. Do you? Boy, there's a lot on there. Kind of pleasurable. So, there was a fair amount of rust on that Beverly shear, wasn't there? Shall I weigh it? Nah. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. See you next time. That's a lot of rust.